Welcome to Undermining with FP Wellman. I'm your host, FP Wellman. Look, I want to start the show off on a serious note this week and apologize to the entire clown community. I know in the past I've said things like the Republican House caucus is a clown car, a clown show, a clown rodeo, and I just feel like I've been hearing that I've been offending the clown community because after all, the clown community does provide a valuable service to the nation. They provide humor, they're organized, they actually practice what they're doing and know the rules, as opposed to the Republican House caucus that doesn't know shit, do they? So I just want to start off on that serious note that unless, I don't mean to offend any of the clowns. I mean, I won't use that term. Well, I probably will use the term again, but a sincere apology to all clowns for comparing them to the House Republican caucus. So let's get on with the show and talk about this goat rodeo. And we're back. I'm Fred Wellman with the host of On Democracy with FP Wellman. You're still here. I'm still here. You're back on the MeidasTouch Network. Look, it came to my attention while the music was playing that I offended the goat community. I apologize. Goats, of course, do provide valuable things to the community. They eat weeds and poop, unlike the Republican House caucus, which just poops everywhere. Nonetheless, we're going to talk about it. And I'm going to talk about, chaos reigns in Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, Joe Biden and his administration are flying around the world, building coalitions, making deals, and getting stuff done. Yes, that's the exact same opening I've used for 4 weeks. 4 weeks. 4 weeks I've used the exact same sentence to start the show, and it's true every week. And that is the insanity of the moment we face. It is crazy. Now, it took a very dark turn this week, so it's a little bit hard to joke. The horrible terror in Israel, a true war, just a dark day, truly there 9/11, especially if you look at the number of people killed, 25 Americans we know of. This is very serious time in the world, and we have no House. The Republicans 10 days ago decided to fire their House Speaker and still are killing each other trying to come up with a new one. Meanwhile, the 45-day CR ticks down to zero. We have no government funding. We cannot do a special bill or funding for our Israeli allies. We have U.S. service members going into danger with the Fifth Fleet, which has no commander and deputy commander, with Central Command, which has no deputy commander, with Israel, into Israel, where there's no ambassador, in Lebanon, where there's no ambassador, all because of the Republicans in Congress between the House and the Senate. So there's a lot to talk about this week. I got the perfect guest. It's because this is the Meidas crossover event of the year. I'm terribly excited. Commonly known just as Popok. It's Michael Popok, 30-year national trial lawyer, strategist at Zumpano Patricios and Popok offices in New York, Miami, and Las Vegas. I don't know where you are right now, Popok, but
I'm in New York.
In New York.
Yeah.
In 2020, he co-founded and the co-host of one of the top global podcasts devoted to the intersection of law and politics, LegalAF, right here in the MeidasTouch Network, our most popular show, I think. Man, I am so glad to have you on the show, brother. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. Big fan of yours in the dark, watching you. Love the show. And I love the time slot because, justice operates better in the sunshine.
Yeah.
And what you do, though, in the dark, at least for most of the world, is really, really important. And when I had the opportunity to join you, I jumped at the chance.
I really appreciate it. It's great fun. I've had a great time the last 6 months here in the network, and it's just such a cool opportunity. But man, there's a lot going on, and so much it touches on your world. So I was so excited to get you on the show. I know it was kind of short notice. I mean, obviously, as we're sitting here cutting the show, the Republican caucus is meeting once again. We're hearing they're eating each other alive, not able to get their stuff together whatsoever. Once again, I guess Jim Jordan is talking about putting his name in the hat. It's just a mess right now. I mean, what happens next, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think Jim Jordan ever took his name out of the hat. He is obviously Donald Trump's choice. Donald Trump is going to be the power broker here, much to everybody that loves democracy's chagrin. I think our press secretary used a great word. I love this word, shambolic, to explain what's going on with the Republican caucus. It's just a shambles.
Yep.
They are incapable of leading. They are incapable of operating the House. I think the voters will have to punish them appropriately at the ballot box in November because rather than do what's right for America and do what's right for justice, all they're doing is talking points for Donald Trump and doing a proxy war for Donald Trump. I mean, all Donald Trump had to say in order to get the votes to be scraped away from Scalise was, I don't know, he's got cancer or something. And that was enough. And everybody said, okay, that must be the signal that I'm not supposed to vote for Scalise. And so they all ran away from him. When you can't even get George Santos to vote for you, okay, you know your candidacy is doomed.
Right.
But and then Trump, of course, has always supported Jordan. And the question is Jordan going to get to 217? Can they count to 217?
Nah.
You know, AOC had a great line. Fred, you and I talked about it yesterday. AOC had a great line. I don't know if she wrote it herself or it was written for her, but it was, we're closer to moderate Republicans. Yes, they exist. Voting to count to 5 to vote for Hakeem Jeffries for speaker than we are them finding the 7 or 8 that they need to make their guy the speaker.
Yep.
That's where we are right now. But the impact is not just the symbolicness of having a speaker.
Right.
The House of Representatives cannot operate and function without a speaker.
And I want to pull that thread for you because that's a little bit confusion, right? Because there was rumors, right, of them trying to empower McHenry with more power as the acting speaker.
Only if the Democrats agree.
Well, there you go.
Only if the Democrats agree to that. Okay. And the reason, Fred, on that, you'll play your clip. The reason for it is McHenry, as the speaker, whatever, temporary tempore of the House, has only very minimal powers to help with the process to select the real speaker.
Right.
Absent that, appropriations bills for wars for our allies can't get passed or promoted. Resolutions like condemning Hamas, anything related to Ukraine, war powers ultimately given to a president can't be done. It's not funny. I mean, we're as Democrats, we're sort of snickering about what's going on.
I know.
But we are at a time of war related to our allies.
Yeah.
And this is not a time for our enemies to be snickering and laughing about what democracy looks like in the hands of MAGA Republicans.
I did a hot take I did 2 hot takes technically this week on just that, you know, one of the big talking points during the week was that the reason Hamas did what they did is because Joe Biden's projecting weakness. And I pointed out, no, what they're seeing is a democracy that can't govern, right? They're seeing the Republic, they're seeing people who conducted essentially a coup not being prosecuted. They see the leading candidate for president for a party have 91 charges against him and literally say in a filing that he wasn't required to support the Constitution. I mean, that's what they're seeing, and the House shows that. So they really can't do anything right now. And then you said, you know, as you mentioned, George Santos, I think he came out of the caucus yesterday because they weren't allowed to have phones because they're all fucking, I did the F word, because they're all fucking children. you know, it's funny. Every time I do this, Michael, I say I'm going to edit it out, and Matt never edits it.
We say stays in the pot.
Well, it stays in. That's what we do, one take, and that's it. But nonetheless, George fucking Santos came out of the damn, the caucus with more charges against him, and still a member in good standing.
Yeah. So on your other point, if you were Hamas and you were trying to pick the ideal moment to hit Israel, this would be the ideal moment because of a number of things having nothing to do with weakness. Quite the opposite for Joe Biden. You would want to try to stop Biden's policy to try to bring Saudi Arabia into a Middle East peace solution, which they were very close to doing. You don't want that if you're Hamas.
Right.
You don't want the Saudis and the United States. You know, you got Biden holding his nose over human rights violations in Saudi Arabia in order for the greater good to have peace in the Middle East with Saudi Arabia on board. You don't want that if you're Hamas. If you're watching Tommy Tuberville, who we should launch in a rocket into Gaza, right, today, blocking at least 9 major military, you'll talk about it, you're the military guy here, 9 major military appointments. We've got a Senate that is also, even though it's ruled by a couple of vote margin by the Democrats, which has not gotten into place all of the ambassadors and all of the diplomats that we need around the world that Joe Biden has nominated. We do not currently have an ambassador to Israel. We have an acting attaché, charge d'affaires that's running around. We don't have an ambassador. And all of this has to do with that kind of chaos. So if you're as Hamas, we have a weak, ineffectual, shambolic Congress. We've got Joe Biden trying to make a deal with the Saudis, which they don't like. And then we got Tommy Tuberville, who's weakened and hollowed out our military.
Yep.
Perfect time to strike, don't you think?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're saying, and it is, and obviously a lot of planning went into this. We'll talk about the intelligence affair, especially the Israeli side, but that's exactly what we've been saying is that, and this is all because of the MAGA Republicans. This is all because of Tuberville and using the rules and the norms, traditions. One of the things I say a lot in the show is we're going to norms and traditions ourselves into fascism, right? Because these rules, these archaic rules that don't allow us, and it drives me crazy. I constantly see in my mentions people saying, well, at this point, this is the Democrats' fault. It's like, oh, for God's sake. It's like a reporter just asked KJP yesterday saying, well, what are the Democrats going to do to help the Republicans get out of this jam? And I love her look on her face like, what? What do you answer? I mean, what do you say to people when they say, well, the Democrats need to save the Republicans on this?
Well, okay. So first of all, this split screen triangulation,
right,
which Clinton came up with, and Biden is obviously a master of let the House burn.
Yep.
Up to the point where they can't, where I need appropriations for Israel next week.
Right.
So they're going to have to temporarily empower McHenry, or they're going to have to deal with Jordan, who will be the Speaker of the House if he can get his 217. But because we got about a week or two before the Israelis decache.
Yeah.
Right now, material is moving around.
Yeah.
They got the 4 storehouses of weapons that have been, I didn't even know they were in Israel all this time. They're going to unlock those doors, let all that out from the
Saudi
US
Arabia
side.
Too. We got a lot of stuff in the Middle East.
European community's kind of busy wringing its hands about, what's going on in the humanitarian crisis, but you got to focus on the war right now. And we'll deal with the humanitarian crisis that's been created by Hamas at the end. But having said that, we gotta, as you said, get away from the norms. We got to find a way around Tuberville. We've got to get all of those military leaders in their right places, in their right theaters, get their families in their right places, and not undermine the foreign policy of America. We have one president at one time for a reason. Only one person is empowered under our Constitution to conduct foreign policy, and that is the current occupant, President Joe Biden. We've got a shadow government and a shadow president who thinks he's allowed to, by the way, it's actually against the Constitution, and it is a crime for you to try to conduct foreign policy or undermine foreign policy. It goes beyond the First Amendment. You got Donald Trump trying to run his own foreign policy, undermining our allies, supporting our enemies in a speech because he's pandering to Jewish voters in Florida. This should be another indictment, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree, and you said something very key there is that these positions need to be passed, and it's not necessarily up to the Schumer and these guys. They have to be put in place because they are. And I want to tell our viewers to understand one of the things that Tuberville has been saying is, well, there's acting commanders. It's fine, but the problem with that is the acting commanders also still say maybe he's the commander of Asia. He's working in Asia. He's not working in the Middle East. It's not. It's funny how I often get veterans in my mentions are like, well, when we didn't have a company commander. Well, the XO just stepped up. It's not that big a deal. It's like, are you fucking kidding? That's a 100-man company compared to the Middle East. I mean, like the new commander for CENTCOM may actually be currently stationed in Japan. You can't do the job from Japan, so which means nobody's in Japan.
On your earlier point on the non-military side, to answer the question, isn't this the Democrats' fault? Look, could we give up on abortion rights and women's right to choose and solve Tuberville's problem for Alabama, which is he doesn't like the fact that that Biden is using the military and military bases for abortions? Sure. We could also give up on our entire moral and political agenda as a party and just immolate ourselves in order to satisfy Tuberville. But we're not going to do that. So, but the other way around it is, I do agree with you. They got to do something procedurally. I know it'll take time to do it the old-fashioned way, right? But it may take a week per person, to get them into the military position if they do it procedurally around Tuberville. But they got to do that. Because we can't keep sitting here looking at 9 empty holes here, 9 or 10 really important holes over on the diplomacy side, including an ambassador for Israel. Jake Lew has been nominated. He's supposed to be called up by the Senate next week. we need an ambassador for Israel right now. It's not just dropping bombs. Right. It's diplomacy, working with Blinken and the State Department to try to get the region not to be set on fire at the same time.
And I have also been framing this a little bit in conversations as sort of a constitutional crisis. And a lot of folks I talk to don't understand that. What's happening here is a single senator is decided he doesn't like a national policy, and he's going to use his privilege as a senator that can block promotions to change national policy. Just one senator. And in our constitutional process, if a senator wants to change national policy, pass a law, pass a bill, he writes the bill, he submits it to, he gets co-sponsors, he submits it to committee, he passes a committee, he gets it to the floor, it gets voted on. That's the process for a senator to do their job. If we give in to just a single senator holding us hostage over a policy doesn't like, that is it's just like, again, it's like negotiating with terrorists. You are truly opening up a can of worms that this won't be the first time. It won't be the last time that they've done this. And we'll see more and more of this when senators figure out that all they got, and people say to me all the time, is Tuberville working for Putin? He must be on their payroll. No, he's a fucking idiot. That's literally it. I mean, people just seem shocked when I tell them that. I say, no, he's an idiot and he's lazy. That's one thing everybody says about Tuberville always. He's really a lazy guy. And this was the easiest thing to do because it's really hard to write a bill, get a committee, get a Congress. So he's doing the easiest thing. And he pushed himself into a corner because this thing went on for now 7 months. He's the darling of the right, the darling of the anti-abortion folks. And now he's in a corner. And sometimes I tell people all the time, the easiest answer is the most obvious one, which is that Tuberville's just a asshole.
Yeah, he calls himself, and his staff calls him Coach.
And
after that description, all I think about is the coach on Cheers. He used to work at the bar. It's the same guy.
Yeah, it is.
Now he's a senator, but he's really, and you could speak to it better than me or anybody else. He's really jeopardizing national security. Yeah. National defense. It's not a talking point anymore.
No,
it is a serious national crisis, one that our enemies are hell bent on taking advantage of and exploiting. You're supposed to come together. We just saw Israel, which has its own. The other thing I left out about timing is you had a Israeli community that was in turmoil over the hard right wing of their government having undermined and destroyed their Supreme Court, with soldiers, it seems like so long ago, but a month or two ago, taking to the streets in hundreds of thousands to protest the attempt to take away the power of the checks and balance power of the Israeli Supreme Court. But now Hamas doing what it did to kill 1,500 innocent Israelis and bullet-riddle babies has led to a unity war government where the minority, Benny Gantz, is now joined with Netanyahu, because he also used to be the chief of staff of the army, in a time of pulling together in crisis to fight a war. Israel is showing us how to run a democracy.
Well, how it's always been. You and I are old enough to remember that's how it was. In a time of crisis, we came together. We supported the president. This Republican Party did exactly the opposite. Within 10 seconds, they were attacking the president and not even doing truth. Like Ted Cruz saying, "Oh, it took Biden forever to say something." He said the same day. He gave a passionate speech. It's just all they do is attack and undermine national security, undermine our military. And for me, as a career military guy, I mean, I literally went to West Point. My first day was Reagan. I think Reagan was at our graduation. It's you're talking 1983, for God's sake.
You and I are peers. I started college in '84.
Well, there you go. Yeah, we are. And that's rare. We're the old man of this network, I guess. Who knew?
No, we're like fine bourbon.
That's it right there. And that's the thing. And now it's the exact opposite, right? Not only they not coming together, they're literally undermining the effort. They're attacking the effort. It's
Fred, I never saw such a thing. I've been a Democrat my entire life. I come from a family of Democrats. That's how I grew up. And because the party has always aligned with my morals. And that's just how I pick a party. But when Reagan was the president, when Bush was the president, whoever was the president at the time, except for the criminal ones like Nixon and Donald Trump, they were always my president until they weren't my president. Even if I didn't agree and I used my First Amendment rights to disagree with policy and different things, which I did and criticized them. However, they were my president, especially at time of war. 9/11, the attack on America, it didn't matter who was in the White House. because they weren't going to use it for political gain. Now Donald Trump, as soon as there is some event, a ripple in the world that deals with foreign policy or national security, he's up there undermining the current occupant, which you're not supposed to do. Look, he's not the only, as I said, I'm on a hot take of mine, or on the LegalAF podcast that I co-anchor. He is not the only living ex-president.
Right.
I mean, Jimmy Carter is still alive. We have Carter, we have Bush, we have Clinton, we have Obama. Not one of them, despite being having their own foundations with their names on it, their own institutes, they are not conducting foreign policy. They're not undermining the foreign policy of the sitting president, regardless of their party. This guy, every day, every way. It goes beyond campaigning and talking about what your agenda would be if you got elected. And it has to do with, this is treason as far as I'm concerned, to continue to undermine in a time of war and attack our allies, inconsistent with American foreign policy.
And it goes exactly where it's always been. I think it's a perfect place to take a break. Got some great sponsors this week. Let's take a break for our sponsors. You know, if someone told me there are science-backed ingredients that could help me feel 15 years younger in just a matter of months, I wouldn't have believed it. Well, then I tried Qualia Senolytics. You know, as we age, everyone accumulates senescent cells in their body. Senescent cells cause symptoms of aging, such as aches and pains, slow workout recoveries, sluggish mental and physical energy that I know so well, all associated with that middle-aged feeling. Now, also known as zombie cells, they're old and worn out and serving a no useful function for your health anymore, but they're taking up space and nutrients from our healthy cells. You know, much like pruning the yellow and dead leaves and plants in my garden, Qualia Senolytic removes those worn out senescent cells to allow for the rest of them to thrive in your body. You take it just 2 days a month. The formula is non-GMO, vegan, as well as gluten-free, and the ingredients are meant to complement one another, factoring in the combined effect of all the ingredients together. But best of all, on top of all that, you have a 100-day money-back guarantee. And since taking Qualia Senolytics, I have had higher energy levels. I feel 15 years younger, more productive, enthusiastic in life, not to mention, importantly for me, less aches and pains. Now, resist aging at the cellular level. Try Qualia Senolytic. Go to neurohacker.com/Fred for up to $100 off, and then use code FRED at checkout for an additional 15% off. That's neurohacker.com/Fred for an extra 15% off of your purchase. And man, thanks Neurohacker for sponsoring our show. You know, I'm older, so heart health and staying healthy, especially when you have a family you want to be able to spend time with as much as possible, is so important. We all have a heartfelt reason to support our blood pressure. In fact, more than half the U.S. population would benefit from blood pressure support. So SuperBeets Heart Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure, and they promote heart-healthy energy. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in SuperBeets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. And with over 30,000 5-star reviews and counting, SuperBeets Heart Chews are having their moment. SuperBeets Heart Chews are incredibly delicious and so much better than any alternative supplements out there. I take my SuperBeets Heart Chews each morning. It's really kickstarted my morning routine. After taking my SuperBeets Heart Chews, I feel like I have more energy and I'm ready to take on the day. SuperBeets is the #1 pharmacist recommended beet brand for cardiovascular health support. It's blood pressure support you can trust. Double your potential with SuperBeets Heart Chews. Now, get a free 30-day supply of SuperBeets Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com using promo code FRED. That's getsuperbeets.com and use promo code FRED at checkout. I hope you'll check it out. Thank you, SuperBeets, for sponsoring our show. You know, you said something so key before the break about Trump, sedition, traitor, and attacking. And that's a great place to talk about Trump, right? I mean, I was talking to a good friend, actually Rachel Vindman, a former guest of the show, who, unlike you and I, who are constantly immersed in looking at this guy, and much to my chagrin, my life has become watching Donald Trump. You know, I'm seeing the arc, but Rachel pointed out she doesn't dabble as much in watching him, and because of that, she's a little bit more distant, and she's clearly seeing that there is something going on with Donald Trump, that there is definitely a diminishing of his mental capacities, his mental capabilities. And I'm seeing it the way, having had a father who was in his 80s, who kind of lost that filter. It was the biggest thing we noticed with my dad. Like he's a World War II vet. He was a little crass. I mean, he's from Boston. I'll let you know, actually he's from Lynn, Mass. If you know Lynn, Mass in the 1930s, Well, my dad lost his filter. It went a certain direction. I'll leave it at that.
Not appropriate for this show.
Not appropriate to the show, and not appropriate to my values, which is why I have them. And I love him. But man, he went woo, and that's what we're seeing with Trump, right? But you saw that speech the other night, praising Hamas, praising Chinese,
Hezbollah.
Hezbollah as being smart. I think you're seeing the same thing, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll tell you, and I did it. I didn't know I was going to bring it full circle and square the circle with you here on this podcast.
Here we are.
I talked about it a week ago when we were covering the first 3 days that 2.5 days that Donald Trump attended the fraud case of the century in New York that's against him. Yeah. And or as Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, like to call it, the Donald Trump show has left, or the circus. Circus is a better metaphor, because you got bright lights, a lot of noise, and then an elephant is crapping and somebody has to clean up behind it. and that's Donald Trump. I mean, as the Republican, right? It's perfect.
It smells too.
And it smells. And I saw Donald Trump come out for these little mini press breaks, the press conferences inside that courthouse. And I practiced in that courthouse at 60 Center Street. I've been in the courtroom and practiced law there, and done trials the way that he has. So I think I'm in a unique position to talk about it. Yeah. He looked like somebody who, having heard just 2 days of testimony, and at that point it was Don Bender, his former longtime 12-year accountant and auditor for all things Trump, including Trump personally, who was dumping on Trump and connecting the dots to the fraud, linking it to Donald Trump particularly. When he came out for that second or third press break, or before he went to Wendy's, Fred, he looked like a guy who had aged about 10 years just listening to the testimony in there. It's one thing to be at a press conference or a rally or an interview on friendly network television. It's another thing to sit to the methodical presentation of evidence and witnesses against you. And he looked, his complexion looked terrible. He was rambling on. And I told our group, I said, he looks like a guy that's seen a ghost. And so that, for me, was the beginning of seeing how much he's aged. Because and you think presidents age while they're in office? Yeah. What do you think Donald Trump, who has 9 trials in 7 months, including 3 major criminal trials and a civil fraud case that's looking to take $500 million off of him, what do you think that's doing to his sleep patterns? Right. What do you think that's doing to his eating patterns or his nervous system? Okay, so that's one. Secondly, he's slurring all day long every time he takes to a podium. Yeah. I mean, he's almost becoming incomprehensible, just the slurring. Yeah. You know, he just can't get his teeth out of the way of his tongue when he talks, which is also usually a sign. I am no neurologist. We
are not neurologists.
But I got a mother who's got frontal lobe dementia, and who's 87, and this guy's 80, and I'm watching the beginnings of it. And then the stuff that you're talking about, which is the Tourette syndrome-like outbursts of mother effer and bullshit and all that, you know,
which he never did before. Which he never didn't do that before. He didn't. Yeah.
Now he's a foul mouth. Yep. Like you said, the mind-mouth barrier has been eliminated for Donald Trump. And because he's under a tremendous amount of pressure, it's degrading his mental capacity. You can see it. He's becoming dysfunctional, almost mentally dysfunctional, which is great for justice, because eventually he's going to have to either take a stand or not take a stand in one of these court proceedings. Right. And we know from his deposition to the Attorney General just 6 months ago that he's lost his fastball. Wait till he takes the stand in front of a judge or a jury, and especially if he decides, against all the advice of his counsel, to testify in one of his criminal cases. Wow. It's just going to expedite him getting put in an orange jumpsuit and being sent off to jail.
Well, and I think the thing is he's had a whole life. I'd say it a lot in the show. He's had a whole life of marketing one guy, Donald Trump, and he's been a master of avoiding any kind of. He's never paid a price for anything, right? He's never, and what you describe right there, sitting in an actual courtroom, having someone in an open courtroom with reporters sitting there recording it all, telling him, telling on his lies, I'm not sure that's happened, really. I mean, there's always been the lawsuits here and there, but he's done, like you said, he's done depositions, but sitting in a courtroom hearing evidence, like I don't think it's ever happened. First time ever at 78 years old. And this is a man who's built up a foundation in his own brain, his addled, whatever, echoey brain, that he's invincible. And I think he's finding out it's not. And you're right. I think that's why he's not doing debates. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Totally. He doesn't have the mental acuity to do a debate right now, and they know they can't prep him for it. The E. Jean Carroll, he decided to go to Scotland and do a golf course opening while threatening to come back to testify, which he never did, and he never will, even in the second E. Jean Carroll rape and defamation case and punitive damages case, which is scheduled for January the 15th. He'll never do that, and he can barely go outside and do 5-minute bursts and outbursts of information when he wants to try to catch the news cycle, because he's just treating this like a campaign, like a whistle blow, a whistle stop, a campaign stop for him. That's all he's doing. There's a rumor he's coming on Tuesday for Michael Cohen to testify. I just did a hot take on this for MeidasTouch. First of all, he's coming back to New York to sit for a deposition for Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, the two former FBI employees who got canned when they worked on the Mueller investigation. And he took credit for Peter Strzok being canned. And Lisa Page had her text messages with her then boyfriend, Peter Strzok, blasted all over social media through the proxies for Donald Trump. But Amy Berman Jackson, a judge in D.C., supported and upheld by an appellate court in D.C., is forcing him to give a deposition on Tuesday for 2 hours in that case, even against the Department of Justice. Department of Justice doesn't want Donald Trump to be deposed. One of those strange bedfellow things where they're defending the office of the presidency, not Donald Trump particularly, and therefore it looks like they're on Trump's side, but they're not really. So he's got to come for that. But right, I don't know where in Manhattan that's going to be, in some law office, I assume, but somewhere within 20 minutes away, Michael Cohen, who is the reason, he doesn't get enough credit for this. He is the reason there is a civil fraud case going on right now. It's because of his 2019 testimony to the House, in which he said, buried within a lot of things that Michael said, was a one-liner that Donald Trump has a history of inflating fraudulently his assets to increase his net worth for borrowing, and at the same time deflating them in order to pay less in taxes. And at the time, the Manhattan DA, Cy Vance at the time, and Letitia James hadn't been elected yet. But as soon as Letitia James heard that and then got elected, she said, that's the investigation I want to go after Donald Trump for. He's a charlatan. He's a snake oil salesman, and I want to bring him down over that. Cy Vance eventually said, sure, that sounds like a great idea on the criminal side. But then he left office, and his replacement, Alvin Bragg, after a year of looking at the evidence, and frankly, he had his own issues with Michael Cohen as a witness, said, I'm going to pass on the criminal part of the fraud case. I'll get him on Stormy Daniels. Letitia James, Office of Attorney General, went forward with her case. But this is the first time, Fred, ever that he's watched what I refer to as a boa constrictor. The slow presentation, methodical, page by page of fraudulent financial statements through witnesses, including 2 major insider witnesses for the Trump organization, the bag men, the money men, the chief financial officer that he got from his father, who committed fraud for his father 50 years ago, the chief controller who reports the CFO, all testifying against him. He's never seen this before. This is squeezing the life out of him. He's in the clutches of Letitia James, and she's loaded for bear.
This is before we talk about Jack Smith. Before we talk about the other ones, I mean, and by the way, is trying to run for president, which is really, it is remarkable to me how far gone the Republican Party has, that they're just letting all this go. And I blame Kevin McCarthy a lot. Everybody's like, we should have helped McCarthy. Like, no, McCarthy made a choice, and he flew to Mar-a-Lago, took that picture, and bent the knee. This is nothing more than the arc of justice that they saw coming, and there's no need for us to save them from themselves. And I do worry about the country, obviously, but I don't know. Going back to that, by the way, I forgot. I don't know if you saw it right before we went to the studio. They can't even get the full caucus to come to the caucus meeting right now. There's literally only the last time I checked, there's only 209 Republicans actually even meeting right now. Literally, they don't have a majority right now. I mean, at some point we may flip the House because they're not showing up for work or something. It's insane.
And one thing, Fred, on that, Nancy Pelosi for the last couple of years governed with almost the exact same slim majority.
Right.
And you never saw, I want to do the split screen here. You never saw the Democrats do anything but unite and galvanize behind Nancy Pelosi and Democratic ideals and get things done. She didn't have the luxury of any more votes than McCarthy did, but she didn't have to bend the knee on day one in order to get the speakership by agreeing that any one congressperson could do a motion to vacate to take him out. He had to do that to get the Gates wing of the party to agree to him, and it was Gates as Brutus that pulled out the knife less than a year later to take him out. That's because they changed the vote, because he sold his soul to the devil, McCarthy, in order to get the job that he always wanted. How did it turn out for you, McCarthy? Not great, right?
I mean, these guys keep flying to the sun and melting, right? You know, and Jim Jordan, I say the same thing about Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan's gotten away with a lot of things. There's lots of talk about but these, I sort of what he wants to, when the minute Jim Jordan, if he takes that gavel and the real national media tunes into Jim Jordan's background, it's gonna be a short-lived one, right? Yeah, I interviewed Jamie Harrison the other day at the DNC fall meeting here in St. Louis, and I wish you'd run the clip, Matt. He did a great. He said, "Yeah, we knew when they took the house, it was gonna be short-term rental." It's like an Airbnb, and we're going to clean the place out, like steam it, But it's
if wars weren't going on and Israel didn't need our undivided attention, if Zelensky didn't need our undivided attention, it would be great It would be great domestically, politically for Joe Biden. To stand, as the Washington Post said in an op-ed piece, to see the president and contrast the executive branch that's in the hands of adults. Some people might think he's too seasoned of an adult, but he is an adult. Say what you want about Joe Biden, but 50 years on the national stage and complete transparency, Joe Biden literally met as a young 30-year-old senator with gold in my ear at the time of the Yom Kippur War. Who can say that on the MAGA side? Nobody. Right. But when you have that split screen, with the not even kindergarten, with the nursery school food throwing that's going on there, I would normally say this is great for Joe Biden, but because we have such a bigger set of national security interests to worry about, I don't have the luxury. I haven't caught myself smiling at something you just said about their inability to caucus a caucus, and normally I would laugh out loud at that, but I am so incensed and I'm so worried about our national security because of what the enemy is watching, Putin, China, and the Arab world, and they don't understand our democracy. Yes, democracy is messy. Okay, this is what the founding fathers left us. Or as Ben Franklin said, right, it's a republic if you can keep it. A constitutional republic, great. And it gets messy, and I kind of always like the messiness, but messiness that undermines the ability to govern, then we've gone beyond the pale, and now we're into undermining national security.
And that's where we are. And that's my challenge too, is I'm a politico, but I'm also a veteran. And to watch it, and I've got kids. My son-in-law is still in the Army. My son served. It's horrifying to me to know what's happening. And I say a lot on on some of my hot takes and shows, this is a long-term impact, right? This isn't as simple like what Tuberville's doing. If you understand, you don't make generals overnight. I don't hire generals. I build generals. And when Milley left, Milley served 43 years in the Army. Now imagine if Milley, when he was a lieutenant colonel like I was and got out at 22, I retired at 22, imagine if Milley, any of these generals have made that decision because they see the insanity. They see that their positions are now been politicized. Because look, now that Tuberville's done it, he's opened Pandora's box. Now there's always going to be a nut job who's going to think that's the way to get around things. We have very, very good, talented leaders who are national security leaders 20 years from now, who are saying right now, oh, hell with this, right? They're saying it's not worth it. And I know because I'm literally hearing those words from colleagues who are still in, or colleagues and friends of theirs saying, good men and good women are saying, I don't need this smoke. I don't need to know that the rest of my career in the military, as I get higher in rank, I'll always be questioned. I'll be called woke. I'll be attacked. My personal life will be attacked for how I want to live my life. They can go get out and get a job at Boeing tomorrow, right? The good people will get out. This is what happened in 90 during the drawdown with Clinton. Before, he did the right thing. We were too big. And anytime a company downsizes, right, the good people leave first because they can find a job somewhere else. And so that's what gives me such horror, the way the Republicans are using the military, especially as a political pounding, a political tool. They've truly politicized the military. It isn't wokeism or the abortion travel law, which is a reasonable medical. Look, when I had Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a whole story, and I couldn't get the test at Fort Rucker, so I had to go to Fort Bragg, and they paid my way. Right? That's it. The medical care wasn't available in Alabama, so I had to go where it was. I could, and abortions aren't available in Alabama, so they're going to need to go to, I don't know, Minnesota. We pay for that. That's normal. I can't choose where I get stationed. So it's especially infuriating for me. And going back to the electoral thing, though, and this is what does make me nervous, because there is so much going on. I mean, this is all occurring while early voting is occurring, ongoing. There's an election in Virginia right now where Glenn Youngkin, the MAGA with a red vest, a comfy red vest, is trying to get unified control of the government under the Republican rule. I mean, I just keep saying as much as I can to everybody I talk to, if you want this for your state, then stay out of that election. And then all this is unfolding as people are finally starting to pay attention to our own election. And I saw a poll, CNN did a poll, I don't know if you saw it yet, but CNN came out with a poll, I think today, showing that Republican support has plummeted as far as support for Republican leadership. They went from a majority, I think 54% support Republican leadership in Congress. It's down to 46. So they're dropping fast because people are watching this clown show. I want to be happy about that, but you're right. We are in the middle of a crisis. We can't really take too much joy in it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't. Yes, it's going to increase greatly the ability or the probability that the Democrats are going to retake the House and the Senate. And we need a larger majority in the Senate.
Boy, do we. Man, do we.
One of the reasons we're having problems with Tuberville and the cloture voting is because Sinema's not trustworthy, and neither is Manchin. And we need every vote there in order to make it happen. If we go to 53 or 54, then we don't have that problem, and that's where we like to be. And I think if the pitch that's being made by both parties right now is put the party back in power at all three branches that has a proven track record to be able to govern, to unify behind their leadership within both houses. It's only the Democrats. The only thing you can take away from watching this is this dumpster fire is that the Republicans are not mature or unified enough to lead, and they have no leader that can unify them. And so you take that out. The question is, Fred, though, is what is it doing to Trump's numbers? I am so tired of seeing that Trump and Biden are somehow head to head in voting. But Joe Biden has accomplished not only more than I thought he would in his first term domestically, and I'm happy with his foreign policy and what Blinken and Jake Sullivan and others have done, but he's done more than most presidents have done in their first term on a domestic front. And the economy is humming along. But the one thing he's terrible at his own public relations. And right now it's not the time because we're kind of supporting a couple of war effort. But he's got to get out there with talking points to talk about all the good things that have happened with investment in chip production, electric battery production, the internet and Wi-Fi around the country, slashing poverty numbers and child poverty numbers, all the things that line up with all of our morals, infrastructure investment. And then, what he's done, let's stop talking about the airlift out of wherever, and let's focus on what he's done in the last year and a half to make NATO stronger, obviously, including the addition of two countries we never thought would be in NATO.
NATO would go away.
Right. And to support Ukraine, yes, with billions of dollars of aid and military advisors, but not one loss of an American on the ground in Ukraine. And yet that tiny country, which should have been overrun by the Soviet Union, by Russia within 90 days, is still fighting. And we're coming up on 2 years.
Has dismantled 50% of the Russian military power with less than 5% of our budget.
I was going to say, and took down hundreds of thousands of Russians already. So this should all be to the benefit, to the kudo of the president. And yet, the narrative of he's doddering, he falls upstairs, he's old, he's senile, is persistent and durable. And we as Democrats have to push back and fight it. I do. I can't tell you how many talking points I have to deal with in my regular life with people who are claim to be moderate Republicans and thinking adults who give me the Kamala's running things. Obama's this is my favorite one. Obama is running the day-to-day operations in the White House. I said, really? How does he do that? Because he just sits on a Zoom all day long, giant head of Obama in the background making pronouncements. Is that how you think?
You see how relaxed he is? He looks so relaxed. He's not doing that.
His shirt off. He looks great.
He looks great. He looks happy. I watched the man for years. I watched him gray. I used to work in DC.
But because they don't
delusional.
And can't give credit to Joe Biden. They have to give credit to ghosts and goblins and Kamala and used to be Nancy was running everything. And then it's the only thing they don't say is Hillary or Bill are running anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing. And then the steadiness. I mean, we have not changed a single cabinet officer. I don't know in my lifetime I've seen an administration go through the entire administration without losing a single cabinet officer. They've all stayed. There's been no scandals. It is remarkable the stability that you wanted, but the stability also it really is truly the dog doesn't bite. You know, the story is never dog doesn't bite man, right? And so we're constantly chasing our tail in that way. I do think it's encouraging what I'm seeing from this. It'll be interesting to see what the numbers are next week with the strong showings he's shown supporting Israel, his strong, powerful speeches. I mean, there's no doddering old man in those speeches. That speech he gave for Israel the other day was just, and I'm one of those guys, you know, I'm not a big cheerleader guy. Everybody knows the show, knows I'm not a big rah-rah guy, but I was very impressed. I think that speech was passion. It showed his heart. It showed the strength that he goes. It shows the depth of his knowledge. I mean, you know, I say it a lot. Senators often aren't great presidents because, and is going back to what you just said about him not taking credit very well. It's that senator thing, right? It's all about being colloquial, being my colleague. If you think about a Senate,
the club of 100,
right? The club of 100. I'm just one of 100. You know, me and my colleagues on the side, but the strength of that in this moment where we needed that for NATO. I mean, what was the first thing he came out with? 5-country statement from UK, France, Italy, and Germany supporting Israel. Okay. I mean, within 48 hours, we had an international group saying, hey, we support them. We're going to make sure that nobody gets any bright ideas here. That's what a senator does. That's why we grew NATO. I mean, in our moment, we've got the right guy in the job.
Well, a couple of things back to our vintage. There was no bigger war hawk in the Democrats than Joe Biden.
That's right.
In the 80s and 90s.
Yes.
People forget that. People kind of forget when he was a senator. There wasn't a war that Joe Biden didn't like.
That's true. That was the criticism of him. Yeah.
Right. So now we've got old war hawk Joe back, who's now, in addition to that, is pissed and upset. Yeah. And it's triggering for him his own emotional composition because he lost his family right before he took office. In fact, he was thinking about not getting sworn in as a senator as a 30-year-old because 2 weeks earlier he lost his wife and 2 children in a car accident. Yep. And every time he talks about loss, and he saw the photos or they were described to him about decapitated people, babies, bullet-riddled babies, and the like, and came to that podium, you know. They I don't know if they showed it to him to geek him up but he was very, very upset when he took to that podium and did something no president has ever done. He called Hamas a terrorist organization as they controlled Gaza, and his peace plans and peace diplomacy be damned. He's going to call it for what it is. And then there was 3 things you and I talked a little bit yesterday in kind of pre-production about the 3 things I wanted to see Biden do. And he's already done 2. And the third one is he's still got time on the clock. Immediately, I want him to come out and do a strong statement along with all of his other diplomats in countries of support for Israel right away and get the military aid flowing, which he's doing. That was one. The second is I wanted him to refreeze that bank account in Korea. In South Korea, that $6 billion that was supposed to be going over to Tehran in order for them to release the hostages. Good news is the hostages are out, but the money wasn't. So I want to kidnap the money and hold it hostage until we figure out Tehran's role. We already know Hamas and its leadership doesn't wipe its ass without an approval by the Ayatollah. And at all, just like Israel doesn't do anything towards Iran in terms of bombing oil fields or nuclear reactors unless Uncle Joe tells him it's okay. Same thing there.
Yeah.
So the third thing I want is I want an oil field and or a nuclear reactor hit in Iran to pay them back for the support of Hamas. That's got to be the Israeli fighter jets with support from NATO. That's got to come from the U.S. It's a bold move, but it's one I think you have to do at this time. Otherwise, you're giving license and invitation for the Syrians and the Iranians to try to attack and tear down Israel. Israel just got caught, as one of our Israeli friends said to me privately, who's living there. He said, we didn't just get caught with our pants down. We got caught with no pants on. And that has to change. I mean, I'm not sure that after this wartime cabinet and unified government does what it has to do over the next 3 to 6 months in reshaping its relationship, I'll put it nicely, with Gaza and Hamas. Hamas will no longer be around to be negotiating with. Netanyahu, based on polling, will probably be forced out of the government. Just forever. As Golda Meir was forced out after the Yom Kippur War. I mean, it's something like 90% of Israelis want Netanyahu to pay the price for what just happened to them.
Yeah, and it's not just the intel failure; it's the policies of folks in the West Bank, the coalition of government he built. I mean, the very root of this came from his policies to kind of help Hamas a little bit, so he could undermine the Palestinian Authority. I mean, this has been his actual policy, and it's coming back to roost in a very
well, the mow the lawn policy, which was every couple of years we got to mow the lawn and take out some Hamas buildings and terrorists. That doesn't work when you know, and there was a little bit of cockiness, unfortunately, and I'm a huge supporter of Israel, been there a number of times, to put so many virtually unprotected and vulnerable kibbutzes lined up along the Hamas Gaza border, and hope and just think that the vaunted Israeli intelligence and security apparatus was going to somehow protect these people. These people didn't. They just dropped off 1,000 M16s now. These people were not, other than their safe rooms, they were not armed. They did not have barbed wire and soldiers appointed there. And that's why this was an easy, unfortunate strike of vulnerable, innocent civilians, 1,500 of them, 200 of them at a music festival. We lost 56 people at a Las Vegas music festival because of a lone gunman at a hotel. Israel just lost 200 people who were dancing for peace at a music festival in the desert, who got wiped out by hang gliders and approaching terrorists from Hamas.
Horrifying.
Right?
I mean, the whole thing horrifies me, and it just, there's no easy answers. I mean, obviously it's going to be tough. These next few weeks are going to be tough. Israel's going to make some very difficult choices. They're going to make people uncomfortable, but we don't have a choice at this point. That is become an axis. I think that's something, the old axis of evil. Nobody wants to say that anymore because of Bush's legacy. But the fact is, Iran is funding Russia, giving Russia weapons. Many of the drones that Russia is using against Ukrainians are coming from Iran, to include having on Ukrainian territory, Iranian trainers are in Russia. You're actually running. They're all coming.
All the drones are coming.
They're all coming from Iran, right? So to see something like Josh Hawley, my Missouri senator here, say we should stop funding Ukraine and give the money to Israel, it's like the stupidity and the lack of understanding. And he's not a stupid person. He's just a malignant jackass that goes towards the idea that we should stop funding one war, that because one's existential and the other, they're both existential crises. And the entire thing we're up against, Russia, Iran, China, these are existential crises for the entire world. And we can't walk away from that. The idea that at some point we could just walk away just kind of makes me crazy. Look, again, not just as a political guy, but as also a veteran.
You know this better than me. We have the capacity and the ability to fight several wars on several fronts at the same time. I don't know if it's still the 4-war strategy, or it's certainly 3. That's fighting.
Right.
We can supply and give military aid to 2 wars at the same time in these 2 regions. The Biden administration has let everybody know that. We have the dollars to do it. We've got the armament to do it. We've got the war contractors to do it. And we've got the desire. And more importantly, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And both are important. One should not be traded for the other. One has to do, they're interconnected in that the first place that the PLA leader wanted to go to have a conversation was Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Russia wants Israeli instability. Russia and Iran want Israeli instability and to undermine them. Putin, who used to be a self-professed supporter of Jews, building a Jewish museum in Moscow and all this other stuff, has been eerily silent about attacking Hamas at all. Normally, when there's terrorist things that happen and the things that happen to the Jews, he comes out and says something. There's a reason he's not saying anything, because he supports it, because it's another way to undermine the United States of America. Because if we see it as our vital interest, then Putin sees it as his vital interest to oppose it.
And he's got his useful idiots like Josh Hawley saying, hey, we should do it. And that's where we're at. So, well, this has been a great conversation. I don't want to keep any longer. Man, I really appreciate your time. This has been a blast, the crossover event of the century. And as always, where can we tell everybody where they can find you from our show?
Sure. Social media, I'm at MS Popok on every place you get social media, including now Threads.
Yes.
I do hot takes like Fred does at the intersection of law, politics, and justice about every day, sometimes every hour, also exclusively on the MeidasTouch Network. And if you like hot takes and shows like this, you want to see a little bit more on the legal political side, come over to LegalAF, also on the MeidasTouch Network. We do it Wednesdays and Saturday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Put it on podcast audio platforms wherever you can get them. And I do it with Karen Friedman Agnifilo, who's a 30-year prosecutor, former prosecutor, on Wednesdays. And I do it with Ben Meiselas, co-founder of the MeidasTouch Network, on Saturdays. LegalAF. It is what you think. A lot of people ask me, what does it mean? It's what you think.
It's what you exactly think. And it's a great show. There's a reason it's the most popular show on the network. So I really appreciate your time, brother. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, Fred.
Talk to you soon. Man, I've been wanting to do that for a while. So great to have Popok on here with us. Brilliant, as you can see. You can see why I love being on the MeidasTouch Network so much. Hey, before we get too far, there's an easy way to follow up. You can go to the MeidasTouch Network, subscribe. You can actually follow. There's playlists for all of your favorite creators like Popok and his colleagues. There's show playlists. You can click on the show playlist. You can, every time we put a new show, we're growing. I think we're at almost 1.7 million subscribers, which is just crazy. I just so appreciate you guys being here. I love being on the network with my friends like Popok and Ben and Brett and Jordy, and just I am a fortunate man. Before we walk away from it, I want to circle back with you about this Virginia election. You know, this is a very key election. I did a hot take for MeidasTouch should come out this weekend, but just so you guys know here from the show, this is a really important election. And I know it's an important election because the Republicans said it's an important election. The fact is, Virginia and I think New Jersey are also having elections, are the key, they're like bellwethers for the 2024 race. Because of that, everybody's testing out their messaging, they're testing out their fundraising, and the Republicans are testing out their voter suppression techniques in Virginia. Like just on the 6th of this month, just a week, less than 4 or 5 days ago, it came out that people were legally stripped of their voting rights, who had served their time, were legally allowed to have their voting rights back, but an automatic mistake had stripped them. While early voting is occurring, Glenn Youngkin's administration is stripping people of their rights to vote. So I can't, if you're in Virginia, I'm begging you, go vote early. Vote Democrat, down the ticket. We need to take back the House. They need to get a bigger margin in the Senate. The lie that Glenn Youngkin's telling about abortion, that he only wants a 15-week ban, and there's going to be exceptions for incest rape, there's nothing that guarantees that's going to happen. When his MAGA people take over the House, they're going to do the most extreme ban you can imagine, and he's going to sign it into law because he's a fraud and a liar. Okay. And I tell you the other sign, billions are flying it. Billionaires are buying this election. Glenn Youngkin raised $4.4 million in one 48-hour period. Sounds terrifying, right? It gets worse. 3 of that came from 2 billionaires. 2. And Glenn Youngkin himself getting there $500,000. There's a reason when you hear that billionaires are buying an election, that should tip you. That should tell you something right there. That should tip you off. Something's going on. So if you've got the opportunity to support good candidates, a bunch of great candidates, I could put them up on the Substack later, who are running for House, running for state Senate there in Virginia. There's the Virginia Majority Project. It's a great project. You can look it up. It's a great place to put your money or your help. You can postcard for them. You can make calls. You can canvass if you're in the region. Just don't ignore a state level election because it doesn't really pertain to you. This is a very important election, and the Republicans need to get a message. We have been winning elections. Democrats have been winning elections right and left, overperforming by 12 points in all the special elections as Dobbs. Abortion's on the ballot. Women's right to choose on the ballot. Our kids' education on the ballot. This is very important. So if you're in Virginia, please go out and vote. Vote early. Vote early. Because if you go to election day and you're not on the rolls, you can't vote. So vote now. And great thing about Virginia, same day registration. So you can go in, register, and vote early. Last day to register for the vote is Monday the 16th. This is Friday. This Monday is the last day to register to vote if you're a Virginia resident, haven't voted yet or haven't registered. So please do your duty. Do your duties as a citizen. People ask me all the time, what can I do, Fred? I know they're sick of hearing it, but you'd be amazed how people just blow off voting. That's how Glenn Youngkin became governor, because people stayed home. So let's not do that. And on that note, it's why I'm involved with Forgotten Democrats. I'm the national chairman of the Forgotten Democrats for a reason. It's the idea is to ensure that this insanity in the Republican House stops. My God, 23 of these lunatics ran unopposed. These lunatics who just took down our government, 23 of them ran unopposed. 126 of them last cycle didn't even have an opponent, was able to raise $200,000 and put up a fight. This is unacceptable. And now I'm hearing reports already, there's no Democrats running in key districts. Right here in Missouri, where I live, in Missouri too, Ann Wagner, who's been getting a lot of press because she's a McCarthy supporter, is running unopposed right now. There's no Democrat against her. We've got to help these candidates. And more often than not, the reason a candidate doesn't run is because they don't know how to raise money. And they have a hard time raising money in their district. Look, if you live in a rural district of Southern Illinois, it's hard to raise money locally. Forgotten Democrats has got a special, our earmark is a special one. The monthly donor programs for a reason. Our earmark allows us to distribute your money directly to the Democratic nominees for Congress, period. Once he's the nominee, or that he or she the nominee, they will get money from the least first. So the Democratic nominee who doesn't have any money, he will get money, and it's not limited to the normal donations, because until your donation is split amongst multiple candidates, until you max out, they don't max out. I really would love you to check out ForgottenDemocrats.org. That's where I spend a lot of my time. I'm proud to be a supporter of them. I would love your support for that if you get a chance. An easy way to sign up for our email is you just text 33777. Just text Fred to 33777. That's a great way to get our email list. In the meantime, check out our Substack community. It's still going. fpwoman.substack.com. Even though we're shooting, I know as you noticed, we're shooting the show on Fridays now. And so the last few weeks have been Fridays. Makes Matt crazy. Matt's been getting gray hair back there in the booth, and my hair is already a luxurious gray. But sometimes it makes it exciting on Friday, trying to get the show turned around on time. But we're shooting on Fridays now. But we'll put up the show as soon as we have it up. You can get it early. If not, you can watch it right here in the MeidasTouch Network. We love you being here. As always, you can get our show on your favorite podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google. I don't know, there's some ones I've never heard of. Just subscribe, like, leave a comment, share. As always, I try to watch the show with you on Friday night. Love seeing your comments and your participation in our conversations. I love having you guys part of my community. I'm so proud to be a part of the MeidasTouch Network. So proud to be in the fight for our democracy beside all of you wonderful people. Let's gather again next week, right here, the same place, same time.